All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's go ahead and settle in, get comfortable, and look to get started with something new, something different, something just a little bit silly. All right, so welcome back. This is our first night of probably just two. This one isn't terribly long, of reading P.G. Wodehouse's Right Ho, Jeeves. This is technically the second book with Jeeves in it. This is another of those early 1900s properties that was kind of just read or published willy-nilly. I think there's at least 2 or 3 of these, and other people have taken up the torch. It's been adapted quite often. British TV loves it. So this should be fun. It should be a nice change of pace from what we had to deal with. No ick, just laughs. So, I'm here for it. How about you guys? And yeah, I also have not read this either. I've seen the various, or I've been aware of the different adaptations. It's been on BBC a few times, and various actually high-profile actors have been involved. I think Hugh Laurie was either he was Wooster. I'm not sure. But yeah, so we've got some just good old-fashioned nonsense ahead of us. And I don't know that we've actually read a whole lot of, like, comedy around here. Nothing that's just silly for its own sake. It's all epic stories and slight bouts of questionable behaviors. Okay, a lot of questionable behaviors. And definitely doomed romance. Why are we so caught up on absolutely doomed romances? Have we had anything that's been wholesome? At all? It's just, there's something about literature that attracts the doomed romance, I guess. Alright, so let's go ahead and try and put all that behind us, and just have something fun. And so we'll begin tonight with P.G. Wodehouse's Right Ho, Jeeves! Chapter 1. You know what? You're right. We did have Archblade, and that was not cursed. You know what? That actually was kind of mushy. I'll good catch. Thank you for reminding me. All right, Chapter 1. Jeeves, I said, may I speak frankly? Certainly, sir. What I have to say may wound you. Not at all, sir. Well then, no. Wait, hold the line a minute. I've gone off the rails. I don't know if you have had the same experience, but snag I always come up against when I'm telling a story is this dashed difficult problem of where to begin it. It's a thing you don't want to go wrong over, because one false step and you're sunk. I mean, if you fool about too long at the start, trying to establish atmosphere, as they call it, and all that sort of rot, you fail to grip and the customers walk out on you. Get off the mark, on the other hand, like a scalded cat, and your public is at a loss. It simply raises its eyebrows, and I can't make out what you're talking about. And in opening my report of the complex case of Gussie Fink-Nortle, Madeline Bassett, my cousin Angela, my Aunt Dahlia, my Uncle Thomas, young Tuppy Glossop, and the cook Anatole, with the above spot of dialogue, I see that I have made the second of these 2 floaters. I shall have to hark back a bit, and, taking it for all in all, and Weighing this against that, I suppose the affair may be said to have had its inception, if inception is the word I want, with that visit of mine to Cannes. If I hadn't gone to Cannes, I shouldn't have met the Basset or bought that white mess jacket, and Angela wouldn't have met her shark, and Aunt Dahlia wouldn't have played baccarat. Yes, most decidedly, Cannes was the point d'appui. Right, well then, let me marshal my facts. I went to Cannes, leaving Jeeves behind, he having been intimated that he did not wish to miss Ascot. Round about the beginning of June, with me travelled my Aunt Dahlia and her daughter Angela. Tuppy Glossop, Angela's betrothed, was to have been of the party, but at the last moment couldn't get away. Uncle Tom, Aunt Dahlia's husband, remained at home, because he can't stick the south of France at any price. So there you have the layout. Aunt Dahlia, cousin Angela, and self off to Cannes, round about the beginning of June. All pretty clear so far, what? We stayed at Cannes for about 2 months, and except for the fact that Aunt Dahlia lost her shirt at baccarat, and Angela nearly got inhaled by a shark while aquaplaning, a pleasant time was had by all. On July the 25th, looking bronzed and fit, I accompanied aunt and child back to London. At 7 p.m. on July the 26th, we alighted at Victoria, and at 7:20 or thereabouts, we parted with mutual expressions of esteem. They to shove off in Aunt Dahlia's car to Brinkley Court, her place in Worcestershire, where they were expecting. Her place in Worcester? I think they just say Worcestershire. My accents are not quite on point. It's Worcester, yeah. Where they were expecting to entertain Tuppy in a day or two. I to go to the flat, drop my luggage, clean up a bit, and put on the soup and fish preparatory to pushing round to the drones for a bite of dinner. As it was while I was at the flat, toweling the torso after a much-needed rinse, that Jeeves, as we chatted of this and that, picking up the threads, as it were, suddenly brought the name of Gussie Fink-Naughty into the conversation. As I recall it, the dialogue ran something as follows. Well, Jeeves, here we are, what? Yes, sir. I mean to say, home again. Precisely, sir. Seems ages since I went away. Yes, sir. Have a good time at Ascot. Most agreeable, sir. Win anything? Quite a satisfactory sum. Thank you, sir. Good. Well, Jeeves, what news on the Rialto? Anybody been phoning or calling or anything during my absence? Mr. Fink-Naughty, sir, has been a frequent caller. I stared. Indeed, it would not be too much to say that I gaped. Mr. Fink-Naughty? Yes, sir. You don't mean Mr. Fink-Naughty? Yes, sir. But Mr. Fink-Naughty's not in London. Yes, sir. Well, I'm blowed. And I'll tell you why I was blowed. I found it scarcely possible to give credence to his statement. This Fink-Naughty, you see, was one of those freaks you come across from time to time during life's journey who can't stand London. He lived year in and year out, covered with moss, in a remote village down in Lincolnshire, never coming up even for Eton and Harrow match. And when I asked him once if he didn't find the time to hang a bit heavy on his hands, he said no, because he had a pond in his garden and studied the habits of newts. I couldn't imagine what could have brought the chap up to the great city. I would have been prepared to bet that as long as the supply of newts didn't give out, nothing could have shifted him from that village of his. Are you sure? Yes, sir. You got the name correctly. Fink-Naughty? Yes, sir. Well, it's the most extraordinary thing. It must be 5 years since he was in London. He makes no secret of the fact that the place gives him the pip. Until now, he's always stayed glued to the country, completely surrounded by newts. Sir? Newts, Jeeves. Mr. Fink-Naughty has a strong newt complex. You must have heard of newts, those little sort of lizard things that charge about in ponds. Oh, yes, sir. The aquatic members of the family Salamandridae, which constitutes the genus Molge. That's right. Well, Gussie has always been a slave to them. He used to keep them at school. I believe young gentlemen frequently do, sir. He kept them in his study, in a kind of class tank arrangement, and pretty nifty the whole thing was, I recall. I suppose one ought to have been able to see what the end would be even then. But you know what boys are. Careless, heedless, busy about their own affairs. We scarcely gave the kink in Gussie's character a thought. We may have exchanged an occasional remark about it being all sorts to make a world. But nothing more. You can guess the sequel. The trouble spread. Indeed, sir. Absolutely, Jeeves. The craving grew upon him. The newts got him. Arrived at man's estate, he retired to the depths of the country and gave his life up to these dumb chums. I suppose he used to tell himself that he could take them or leave them alone, and then he found, too late, that he couldn't. It is often the way, sir. Too true, Jeeves. At any rate, for the last 5 years, he has been living at this place of his down in Lincolnshire, as confirmed a species-shunning hermit as ever, put fresh water in the tank every second day and refused to see a soul. That's why I was so amazed when you told me he had suddenly risen to the surface like this. I still can't believe it. I am inclined to think that there must be some mistake, and that this bird who has been calling here is some different variety of fingnottle. The chap I know wears horn-rimmed spectacles and has a face like a fish. How does that check up with your data? The gentleman who came to the flat wore horn-rimmed spectacles, sir. And looked like something on a slab? Possibly there was a certain suggestion of the piscinge, sir. Then it must be Gussie, I suppose. But what on earth can have brought him up to London? I am in a position to explain that, sir. Mr. Finknortle confided to me his motive in visiting the metropolis. He came because the young lady is here. Young lady? Yes, sir. You don't mean he's in love? Yes, sir. Well, I'm dashed. I'm really dashed. I positively am dashed, Jeeves. And I was, too. I mean to say, a joke's a joke, but there are limits. Then I found my mind turning to another aspect of this rummy affair, conceding the fact that Gussie Fignortle, against all the ruling of the form book, might have fallen in love. Why should he have been haunting my flat like this? No doubt the occasion was one of those when a fellow needs a friend, but I couldn't see what had made him pick it on me. It wasn't as if he and I were in any way bosom. We'd seen a lot of each other at one time, of course, but in the last 2 years, I hadn't so much as a postcard from him. I put all this to Jeeves. Odd his coming to me. Still, if he did, he did. No argument about that. It must have been a nasty jar for the poor perisher when he found I wasn't here. No, sir. Mr. Finknortle did not call to see you, sir. Pull yourself together, Jeeves. You've just told me that this is what he's been doing, and assiduously at that. It was I with whom he was desirous of establishing communication, sir. You? I didn't know you had ever met him. I had not had that pleasure until he called here, sir. But it appears that Mr. Sipperley, a fellow student with whom Mr. Finknortle had been at the university, recommended him to place his affairs in my hands. The mystery had conked. I saw all. As I dare say you now, Jeeves's reputation as a counsellor has long been established among the cognoscenti. And the first move of any of my little circle on discovering themselves in any form of soup is always to roll round and put the thing up to him. And when he's got A out of a bad spot, A puts B onto him. And then, when he has fixed up B, B sends C along, so on, if you get my drift, and so forth. That's how these big consulting practices like Jeeves grow. Old Sippy, I knew, had been deeply impressed by the man's efforts on his behalf at the time when he was trying to get engaged to Elizabeth Moon, so it was not to be wondered at that he should have advised Gussie to apply. Pure routine, you might say. Oh, you're acting for him, are you? Yes, sir. Now I follow. Now I understand. And what is Gussie's trouble? Oddly enough, sir, precisely the same as that of Mr. Sipperley when I was unable to be of assistance to him. No doubt you recall Mr. Sibley's predicament, sir. Deeply attached to Miss Moon, he suffered from a rooted diffidence, which made it impossible for him to speak. I nodded. I remember, yes, I recall the Sibley case. He couldn't bring himself to the scratch. A marked coldness of the feet, was there not? I recollect you saying he was letting, what was it? Letting something do something. That's edited to it, if I am not mistaken. Letting I dare not wait upon. I would, sir. That's right, but how about the cats? Like the poor cat in the adage, sir. Exactly. It beats me how you think up these things. And Gussie, you say, is in the same position? Yes, sir. Each time he endeavours to formulate a proposal of marriage, his courage fails him. And yet, if he wants this female to be his wife, he's got to say so. What? I mean, only civil to mention it. Precisely, sir. I mused. Well, I suppose this was inevitable, Jeeves. I wouldn't have thought that this Fink Knottle would ever have fallen victim to the divine P, but if he has, no wonder he finds the going sticky. Yes, sir. Look at the life he's led. Yes, sir. I don't suppose he has spoken to a girl for years. What a lesson this is to us, Jeeves, not to shut ourselves up in the country houses and stare into glass tanks. You can't be the dominant male if you do that sort of thing. In this life, you can choose between two courses. You can either shut yourself up in a country house and stare into tanks, or you can be a dasher with the sex. You can't do both. No, sir. I mused once more. Gussie and I, as I say, had rather lost touch, but all the same, I was exercised about the poor fish, as I am about all my pals, close or distant, who find themselves treading upon life's banana skins. It seemed to me that he was up against it. I threw my mind back to the last time I had seen him, about 2 years ago. It had been. I had looked in at his place while on a motor trip, and he had put me right off my feet by bringing a couple of green things with legs to the luncheon table, crooning over them like a young mother, and eventually losing one of them in the salad. That picture, rising before my eyes, didn't give me much confidence in the unfortunate goof's ability to woo and win. Especially if the girl his had earmarked was one of those tough modern thugs, all lipstick and cool, hard, sardonic eyes, as she probably was. Tell me, Jeeves, I said, wishing to know the worst. What sort of a girl is this girl of Gussie's? I have not met the young lady, sir. Mr. Fink Knottle speaks highly of her attractions. Seemed to like her, did he? Yes, sir. Did he mention her name? Perhaps I know her. She is a Miss Bassett, sir. Miss Madeline Bassett. What? Yes, sir. I was deeply intrigued. Egad, Jeeves! Fancy that! It is a small world, isn't it, what? The young lady is an acquaintance of yours, sir. I know her well. Your news has relieved my mind, Jeeves. It makes the whole thing begin to seem far more like a practical working proposition. Indeed, sir. Absolutely. I confess that until you supplied this information, I was feeling profoundly dubious about poor old Gussie's chances of inducing any spinster of any parish to join him in the saunter down the aisle. You will agree with me that he is not everybody's money. There may be something in what you say, sir. Cleopatra wouldn't have liked him. Possibly not, sir. And I wonder if he would go any too well with Tallulah Bankhead. No, sir. But when you tell me that the object of his affection is Miss Bassett, why then, Jeeves, hope begins to dawn a bit. He's just the sort of chap a girl like Madeline Bassett might scoop in with relish. This Bassett, I must explain, had been a fellow visitor of ours at Cannes, and as she and Angela had struck up one of those effervescent friendships which girls do strike up, I had seen quite a bit of her. Indeed, in my moodier moments, it sometimes seemed to me that I could not move a step without stubbing my toe on the woman. And what made it all so painful and distressing was that the more we met, the less did I seem, or the less... Going a little too fast for my own good here. The more we met, the less did I seem able to find able to find to say to her. You know how it is with some girls. They seem to take the stuffing right out of you. I mean to say, there is something about their personality that paralyzes the vocal cords and reduces the contents of the brain to cauliflower. It was like that with this Bassett and me. So much so that I have known occasions when, for minutes at a stretch, Bertram Wooster might have been observed fumbling with the tie, shuffling the feet, and behaving in all other respects in her presence like the complete dumb brick. When, therefore, she took her departure some 2 weeks before we did, you may readily imagine that, in Bertram's opinion, it was not a day too soon. It was not her beauty, mark you, that thus numbed me. She was a pretty enough girl in a droopy, blonde, saucer-eyed way, but not the sort of breath-taker that takes the breath. No, what caused this disintegration in a usually fairly fluent prattler with the sex was her whole mental attitude. I don't want to wrong anybody, so I won't go so far as to say that she actually wrote poetry, but her conversation, to my mind, was of a nature calculated to excite the liveliest suspicions. Well, I mean to say, when a girl suddenly asks you out of the blue sky if you don't sometimes feel that the stars are God's daisy chain, you begin to think of it. As regards the fusing of her soul and mine, therefore there was nothing doing. But with Gussie, the position was entirely different. The thing that had stymied me, viz., that this girl was obviously all loaded down with ideals and sentiment and whatnot, was quite in order as far as he was concerned. Gussie had always been one of those dreamy, soulful birds. You can't shut yourself up in the country and live only for newts, if you're not. And I could see no reason why, if he could somehow be induced to get the low, burning words off his chest, he and the Bassett shouldn't hit it off like ham and eggs. She's just the type for him, I said. I am most gratified to hear it, sir. This one is a challenge in its own right, because this chapter, at least according to this e-reader, is 75 pages. It just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. It's just non-stop. I'm enjoying it, but goodness gracious, I do need to go ahead and see it. Okay, no, so it does break it up. It just is interestingly separated. Okay, so we do have decent breaks coming up. Alright, let's not get too distracted here as I'm trying to catch my breath. Very good, sir, replied the honest fellow. I will attend to the matter at once. Now, up to this point, as you will doubtless agree, what you might call a perfect harmony had prevailed. Friendly gossip between employer and employed, and everything as sweet as a nut. But at this juncture, I regret to say, there was an unpleasant switch. The atmosphere suddenly changed, the storm clouds began to gather, and before we knew where we were, the jarring note had come bounding on the scene. I have known this to happen before in the Wooster home. The first intimation I had that things were about to hot up was a pained and disapproving cough from the neighborhood of the carpet. For during the above exchanges, I should explain, while I, having dried the frame, had been dressing in a leisurely manner, donning here a sock, there a shoe, and gradually climbing into the vest, the shirt, the tie, and the knee-length, Jeeves had been down on the lower level, unpacking my effects. He now rose, holding a white object, and at the sight of it, I realized that another of our domestic crises had arrived. Another of those unfortunate clashes of will between two strong men, and that Bertram, unless he remembered his fighting ancestors and stood up for his rights, was about to be put upon. I don't know if you were at Cannes this summer. If you were, you will recall that anybody with any pretensions to being the life and soul of the party was accustomed to attend binges at the casino in the ordinary evening wear trouserings, topped to the north by a white mess jacket with brass buttons. And ever since I had stepped aboard the blue train at Cannes station, I had been wondering on and off how mine would go with Jeeves. In the matter of evening costume, you see, Jeeves is hidebound and reactionary. I had trouble with him before about soft-bosomed shirts, and while these mess jackets had, as I say, been all the rage, tout ce que de chi, on the Côte d'Azur, I had never concealed it from myself. Even when treading the measure at the Palm Beach casino, in the one I had hastened to buy, that there might be something of an upheaval about it on my return. I prepared to be firm. "Yes, Jeeves," I said, and though my voice was suave, a close observer in a position to watch my eyes would have noticed a steely glint. Nobody had a greater respect for Jeeves's intellect than I have, but this disposition of his to dictate to the hand that fed him I felt, to be checked. This mess jacket was very near to my heart, and I jolly well intended to fight for it with all the vim and grand of old Sieur de Worcester at the Battle of Agincourt. "Yes, Jeeves," I said. "Something on your mind, Jeeves?"
"I fear that you inadvertently left cans in the possession of a coat belonging to some other gentleman, sir."
I switched on the steely a bit more. "No, Jeeves," I said in a level tone. "The object under advisement is mine. I bought it out there."
"You wore it, sir?"
"Every night."
"But surely you're not proposing to wear it in England, sir?"
I saw that we had arrived at the nub. "Yes, Jeeves."
"But, sir, you were saying, Jeeves, it is quite unsuitable, sir."
"I do not agree with you, Jeeves. I anticipate a great popular success for this jacket. It is my intention to spring it on the public tomorrow at Pongo Twistleton's birthday party, where I confidently expect it to be one long scream from start to finish. No argument, Jeeves, no discussion. Whatever fantastic objection you may have taken to it, I wear this jacket."
"Very good, sir."
He went on with his unpacking. I said no more on the subject. I had won the victory, and we Woosters do not triumph over a beaten foe. Presently, having completed my toilet, I bade the man a cheery farewell, and in generous mood suggested that, as I was dining out, why didn't he take the evening off and go to some improving picture or something, sort of olive French, if you see what I mean. He didn't seem to think much of it.
"Thank you, sir. I will remain in."
I surveyed him narrowly. "Is this dudgeon, Jeeves?"
"No, sir. I am obliged to remain on the premises. Mr. Finknottle informed me. He will be calling to see me this evening."
"Oh, Gus is coming, is he? Well, give him my love."
"Very good, sir."
"Yes, sir. And a whiskey and soda and so forth."
"Very good, sir."
"Right-o, Jeeves." I then set off for the drones. At the drones, I ran into Pongo Twistleton, and he talked so much about this forthcoming merrymaking of his, of which good reports had already reached me through my correspondence, that it was nearing 11 when I got home again. And scarcely had I opened the door when I heard voices in the sitting room, and scarcely had I entered the sitting room when I found that these proceeded from Jeeves and what appeared at first sight to be the devil. A closer scrutiny informed me that it was Gussie Finknottle, dressed as Mephistopheles. And that brings us to the end of chapter 1. So yeah, this one definitely, I think, because of the character of Wooster, it lends itself to a sort of breakneck pace. I'm mostly managing to keep from stumbling over my own tongue. Mostly. The French did ambush me, though. Usually I like to look at the page and, let it sink in for a minute and suss out how it should at least maybe sound. No time for that. We must carry on. But this is a fun dynamic they have so far. Jeeves is always, the long-suffering and just nothing but forbearance. And yeah, that's fair. Yeah, belay that one. But yeah, and so Wooster being effervescent and bubbly and going all on and on and on and on and on with nary a stop for breath, lends itself very well to the contrast between the two, which is probably why this is played off so well as both comedy, and it probably does very well on television. So, I could see it. Picturing it now. Yep. Alright, let's see where we go from here. Let's see, the third chapter's only about 7 pages forward. Yeah, perfect. "What ho, Gussie?" I said. "You couldn't have told it from my manner, but I was feeling more than a bit nonplussed. The spectacle before me was enough to nonplus anyone. I mean to say, this Fink Nortal, as I remembered him, was the sort of shy, shrinking goop one might have expected to shake like an aspen if invited to so much as a social Saturday afternoon at the vicarage. And yet, here he was, if one could credit one's senses, about to take part in a fancy dress ball, a form of entertainment notoriously a testing experience for the toughest. And he was attending that fancy dress ball, mark you, not like every other well-bred Englishman as a Piero, but as Mephistopheles. This involving, as I need scarcely stress, not only scarlet tights, but a pretty frightful false beard. Rummy, you'll admit. However, one masks one's feelings. I betrayed no vulgar astonishment, but, as I say, what hoed with civil nonchalance. He grinned through the fungus, rather sheepishly, I thought.
"Oh, hello, Bertie."
"Long time since I saw you. Have a spot?"
"No, thanks. I must be off in a minute. I just came round to ask Jeeves how he thought I looked. How do you think I look? How do you think I look, Bertie?"
Well, the answer to that, of course, was perfectly foul. But we Woosters are men of tact, and have a nice sense of the obligations of a host. We do not tell old friends beneath our roof tree that they are an offence to the eyesight. I evaded the question. "I hear you're in London," I said carelessly.
"Oh, yes."
"Must be years since you came up."
"Oh, yes."
"But now that you're off for an evening's pleasure." He shuddered a bit. He had, I noticed, a hunted air.
"Pleasure."
"Aren't you looking forward to this rout or revel?"
"Oh, I suppose it'll be all right,"
he said, in a toneless voice.
"Anyway, I ought to be off, I suppose. The thing starts round about 11. I told my cab to wait. Will you see if he's there, Jeeves?" "Very good, sir."
There was something of a pause after the door had closed. A certain constraint. I fixed myself a beaker, while Gussie, a glutton for punishment, stared at himself in the mirror. Finally, I decided that it would be best to let him know that I was abreast of his affairs. It might be that it would ease his mind to confide in a sympathetic man of experience. I have generally found, with those under the influence, that what they want more than anything is the listening ear. "Well, Gussie, or Leper," I said, "I have been hearing all about you."
"Eh?"
"This little trouble of yours. Jeeves has told me everything." He didn't seem any way too braced. It's always difficult to be sure, of course, when a chap has dug himself in behind a Mephistopheles beard, but I fancy he flushed a trifle.
"I wish Jeeves wouldn't go gassing all over the place. It was supposed to be confidential."
I could not permit this tone. "Dishing up the dirt to the young master can scarcely be described as gassing all over the place," I said, with a touch of rebuke. "Anyway, there it is. I know all, and I should like to begin," I said, sinking my personal opinion that the female in question was a sloppy pest in my desire to buck and encourage, by saying that Madeline Bassett is a charming girl, a winner, and just the sort for you.
"You don't know her?"
"I certainly know her. What beats me is how you ever got in touch. Where did you meet?"
"She was staying at a place near mine in Lincolnshire, the week before last."
"Yes, but even so, I didn't know you called on the neighbours."
"I don't. I met her out for a walk with her dog. The dog had got a thorn in its foot, and when she tried to take it out, it snapped at her, so of course I had to rally round."
"You extracted the thorn?"
"Yes."
"And fell in love at first sight?"
"Yes."
"Well, dash it, that with a thing like that to give you a send-off, why didn't you cash in immediately?"
"I hadn't the nerve."
What happened?
We talked for a bit.
What about?
Oh, birds.
Birds? What birds?
The birds that happened to be hanging around, and the scenery, and all that sort of thing. And she said she was going to London, and asked me to look her up if I was ever there.
And even after all that, you didn't so much as press her hand?
Of course not.
Well, I mean, it looked as though there was no more to be said. If a chap is such a rabbit that he can't get action when he's handed the thing on a plate, his case would appear to be pretty hopeless. Nevertheless, I had reminded myself that this non-starter and I had been at school together. One must make an effort for an old school friend. Ah, well, I said, we must see what can be done. Things may brighten. At any rate, you will be glad to learn that I am behind you in this enterprise. You have Bertram Wooster in your corner, Gussie.
Thanks, old friend. And Jeeves, of course, which is the thing that really matters.
I don't mind admitting that I winced. He meant no harm, I suppose. But I'm bound to say that this tactless speech nettled me not a little. People are always nettling me like that, giving me to understand, I mean to say that, in their opinion, Bertram Wooster is a mere cipher, and that the only member of the household with brains and resources is Jeeves. It jars on me. And tonight it jarred on me more than usual, because I was feeling pretty dashed, fed with Jeeves. Over that matter of the mess jacket, I mean. True, I had forced him to climb down, quelling him as described, with the quiet strength of my personality, but I was still a trifle surety at his having brought the thing up at all. It seemed to me that what Jeeves wanted was the iron hand. And what is he doing about it? I inquired stiffly.
He's been giving the position of affairs a lot of thought.
He has he?
It's on his advice that I'm going to this dance.
Why?
She is going to be there. In fact, it was she who sent me the ticket of invitation, and Jeeves considered.
And why not as a Piero? I said, taking up the point which had struck me before. Why this break with a grand old tradition?
He particularly wanted me to go as Mephistopheles.
I started. He did he? He specifically recommended that definite costume.
Yes.
Ha! Eh? Nothing, just ha. And I'll tell you why I said ha. Here was Jeeves making heavy weather about me wearing a perfectly ordinary white mess jacket, a garment not only tout de chic, but absolutely de rigueur. And in the same breath, as you might say, inciting Gussie Finknortle to be a blot on the London scene in scarlet tights. Ironical, what? One looks askance at this sort of in-and-out running.
What has he got against Pieros?
I don't think he objects to Pieros as Pieros, but in my case, he thought a Piero wouldn't be adequate. Oh, I'm mixing up the voice there.
What has he got against Pieros?
No, flip that around. What has he got against Pieros?
I don't think he objects to Pieros as Pieros. But in my case, he thought a Piero wouldn't be adequate.
I don't follow that.
He said that the costume of Piero, while pleasing to the eye, lacked the authority of the Mephistopheles costume.
I still don't get it.
Well, it's a matter of psychology, he said.
There was a time when a remark like that would have had me snookered, but long association with Jeeves has developed the Wooster vocabulary considerably. Jeeves has always been a whale for the psychology of the individual, and I now follow him like a bloodhound when he snaps it out of the bag. Oh, psychology.
Yes, Jeeves is a great believer in the moral effect of clothes. He thinks I might be emboldened in a striking costume like this. He said a pirate chief would be just as good. In fact, a pirate chief was his first suggestion, but I objected to the boots.
I saw his point. There is enough sadness in life without having fellows like Gussie Finknortle going about in sea boots. And are you emboldened?
Well, to be absolutely accurate, Bertie, old man, no.
A gust of compassion shook me. After all, though we had lost touch a bit of recent years, this man and I had once thrown inked darts at each other. Gussie, I said, take an old friend's advice, and don't go within a mile of this binge.
It's my last chance of seeing her. She's off tomorrow to stay with some people in the country. Besides, you don't know.
Don't know what?
That this idea of Jeeves won't work. I feel a most frightful chump now, yes. But who can say whether that will not pass off when I get into a mob of other people in fancy dress? I had the same experience as a child, one year during the Christmas festivities. They dressed me up as a rabbit, and the shame was indescribable. Yet, when I got to the party and found myself surrounded by scores of other children, many in costumes even ghastlier than my own, I perked up amazingly, joined freely in the revels, and was able to eat so hearty a supper that I was sick twice in the cab coming home. What I mean is, you can't tell in cold blood.
I weighed this. It was specious, of course. And you can't get away from it that, fundamentally, Jeeves' idea is sound.
And you can't get away from it that, fundamentally, Jeeves' idea is sound. In a striking costume like Mephistopheles, I might quite easily pull off something pretty impressive. Colour does make a difference. Look at newts. During the courting season, the male newt is brilliantly coloured. It helps him a lot.
But you aren't a male newt.
I wish I were. Do you know how a male newt proposes, Bertie? He just stands in front of the female newt, vibrating his tail and bending his body in a semicircle. I could do that on my head. No, you wouldn't find me grousing if I were a male newt.
But if you were a male newt, Madeline Bassett wouldn't look at you. Not with the eye of love, I mean.
She would, if she were a female newt.
But she isn't a female newt.
No. But suppose she was.
Well, if she was, you wouldn't be in love with her.
Yes, I would. If I were a male newt.
A slight throbbing about my temples told me that this discussion had reached saturation point. Well, anyway, I said, coming down to hard facts and cutting out all this visionary stuff about vibrating tails and whatnot, the salient point that emerges is that you are booked to appear at a fancy dress ball. And I tell you out of my riper knowledge of fancy dress balls, Gussie, that you won't enjoy yourself.
It isn't a question of enjoying yourself.
I wouldn't go.
I must go. I keep telling you she's off to the country tomorrow.
I give it up. So be it, I said. Have it your own way. Yes, Jeeves?
Mr. Finknottle's cab, sir. Oh, the cab, eh?
The cab, eh? Your cab, Gussie.
Oh, the cab. Oh, right. Oh, yes, rather. Thanks, Jeeves. Well, so long, Bertie.
And, giving me the sort of weak smile Roman gladiators used to give the emperor before entering the arena, Gussie trickled off. And I turned to Jeeves. The moment had arrived for putting him in his place, and I was all for it. It was a little difficult to know how to begin, of course. I mean to say, while firmly resolved to tick him off, I didn't want to gash his feelings too deeply. Even when displaying the iron hand, we Woosters like to keep the thing fairly matey. However, on consideration, I saw that there was nothing to be gained by trying to lead up to it gently. It is never any use beating around the bee. Jeeves, I said, may I speak frankly?
Certainly, sir.
What I have to say may wound you.
Not at all, sir.
Well then, I have been having a chat with Mr. Finknottle, and he has been telling me about this Mephistopheles scheme of yours.
Yes, sir.
Now, let me get it straight. If I follow your reasoning correctly, you think that, stimulated by being upholstered throughout in scarlet heights, Mr. Finknottle, on encountering the adored object, will vibrate his tail and generally let him go into a whoop.
I am of the opinion that he will lose much of his normal diffidence, sir.
I don't agree with you, Jeeves.
No, sir.
No. In fact, not to put too fine a point upon it, I consider that all of the dashed, silly, drivelling ideas I ever heard in my puff, this is the most blithering and futile. It won't work, not a chance. All you have done is subject Mr. Finknottle to the nameless horrors of a fancy dress ball for nothing. And this is not the first time this sort of thing has happened. To be quite candid, Jeeves, I have frequently noticed before how it now a tendency or disposition on your part to become, what's the word?
I could not say, sir.
Eloquent? No, it's not eloquent. Elusive? No, it's not elusive. It's on the tip of my tongue. It begins with an E and means being a jolly sight too clever.
Elaborate, sir.
That is the exact word I was after. Too elaborate, Jeeves. This is what you are frequently prone to become. Your methods are not simple, not straightforward. You cloud the issue with a lot of fancy stuff that is not of the essence. All that Gussie needs is the elder brotherly advice of a seasoned man of the world. So what I suggest is that, from now onward, you leave this case to me.
Very good, sir.
You lay off and devote yourself to your duties about the home.
Very good, sir.
I shall no doubt think of something quite simple and straightforward, yet perfectly effective ere long. I will make a point of seeing Gussie tomorrow.
Very good, sir.
Righto, Jeeves. But on the morrow, all those telegrams started coming in, and I confess that for 24 hours I didn't give the poor chap a thought, having problems of my own to contend with. And that brings us to the end of chapter 2. So, we saw the beginning, finally. The whole first chapter and a half was all preamble to the very first few words there. So, Wooster has a lot going on in that little head of his. Just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning around. And eventually, maybe, perhaps, almost coming to a point. Maybe. The newt exchange there with the friend was fun. It had very, very much like classic Monty Python vibes. Makes sense, British humor and all that, but it's fun. It's fun. I'm having fun with this, honestly. The difference in tone between this and Genji is so night and day that it's just a relief. There's no existential dread hanging over me, no knowing, no dire knowledge that we're going to be coming to some very icky squicky stuff. No, this is just fun banter with an empty-headed buffoon of a noble and his butler. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Alright, so let's see. How long is chapter 3 here? Oh, that's not too long at all. Okay, we'll get through at least one more chapter here before we take a break. I've mostly caught my breath and adjusted to this frantic pace. Alright, chapter 3. The first of the telegrams arrived shortly after noon, and Jeeves brought it in with the before-luncheon snifter. It was from my Aunt Dahlia, operating from Market Snodsbury, a small town of sorts a mile or two along the main road as you leave her country seat. It ran as follows. Come at once, Travers. And when I say it puzzled me like the dickens, I am understating it. If anything, as mysterious a communication I considered as was ever flashed over the wires. I studied it in a profound reverie for the best part of 2 dry martinis and a dividend. I read it backwards, I read it forwards. As a matter of fact, I have a sort of recollection of even smelling it, but it still baffled me. Consider the facts. I mean, it was only a few hours since this aunt and I had parted, after being in constant association for nearly 2 months. And yet, here she was, with my farewell kiss still lingering on her cheek, so to speak, pleading for another reunion. Bertram Wooster is not accustomed to this gluttonous appetite for his society. Ask anyone who knows me, and they will tell you that after 2 months of my company, what the normal person feels is that they will about do for the present. Indeed, I have known people who couldn't stick it out for more than a few days. Before sitting down to the well-cooked, therefore, I sent this reply. Perplexed. Explain. Bertie. To this, I received an answer during the after-luncheon sleep. What on earth is there to be plexed about, ass? Come at once. Travers. 3 cigarettes and a couple of turns about the room, and I had my response ready. How do you mean, come at once? Regards, Bertie. I appended the comeback. I mean, come at once, you maddening halfwit. What did you think I meant? Come at once or expect an aunt's curse first post tomorrow. Love, Travers. I then dispatched the following message, wishing to get everything quite clear. When you say come, do you mean come to Brinkley Court? And when you say at once, do you mean at once? Fogged, at a loss. All the best, Bertie. I sent this off on my way to the drones, where I spent a restful afternoon throwing cards into a top hat with some of the better element. Returning in the evening hush, I found the answer waiting for me. Yes. It doesn't matter whether you understand or not. You just come at once, and as I tell you, and for heaven's sake, stop this backchat. Do you think I'm made of money that I can afford to send you telegrams every 10 minutes? Stop being a fathead and come immediately. Love, Travis. It was at this point that I felt the need of getting a second opinion. I pressed the bell. Jeeves, I said. A V-shaped rumminess has manifested itself in the direction of Worcester. Read these, I said, handing him the papers in the case. He scanned them. What do you make of it, Jeeves?
I think Mrs. Travers wishes you to come at once, sir.
You gather that too, do you?
Yes, sir.
I put the same construction on this thing. But why, Jeeves? That's all. She's just had nearly 2 months of me.
Yes, sir.
And many people consider the medium dose for an adult 2 days.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the point you raise. Nevertheless, Mrs. Travers appears very insistent. I think it would be well to acquiesce in her wishes.
Pop down, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Well, I certainly can't go at once. I have an important conference on the drones tonight. Pongo Twistleton's birthday party, did you remember?
Yes, sir.
There was a slight pause. We were both recalling the little unpleasantness that had arisen. I felt obliged to allude to it. You're all wrong about that mess jacket, Jeeves.
These things are matters of opinion, sir.
When I wore it at the casino at Cannes, beautiful women nudged one another and whispered, "Who is he?"
The code at continental casinos is notoriously lax, sir.
And when I described it to Pongo last night, he was fascinated.
Indeed, sir.
So were all the rest of those present. One and all admitted that I got hold of a good thing. Not a dissentient voice.
Indeed, sir.
I am convinced that you will eventually learn to love the mess jacket, Jeeves.
I fear not, sir.
I gave it up. It is never use trying to reason with Jeeves on these occasions. Pig-headed is the word that springs to the lips. One sighs and passes on. Well, anyway, returning to the agenda, I can't go down to Brinkley Court or anywhere else yet a while. That's final. I'll tell you what, Jeeves. Give me form and pencil, and I'll wire her that I'll be with her sometime next week, or the week after. That's all. She ought to be able to hold out without me for a few days. It only requires willpower.
Yes, sir.
Righto then, I'll wire. Expect me tomorrow fortnight. Or words to some effect. That ought to be the case. Then, if you will toddle round the corner and send it off, that will be that.
Very good, sir.
And so the long day wore on, till it was time for me to dress for Pongo's party. Pongo had assured me, while chattering of the affair of the previous night, that this birthday binge of his was to be on a scale calculated to stagger humanity, and I must say, I have participated in less fruity functions. It was well after 4 when I got home, and by that time I was about ready to turn in. I can just remember groping for the bed and crawling into it, and it seemed to me that the lemon had scarcely touched the pillow before I was aroused by the sound of the door opening. I was barely taking over, but I contrived to raise an eyelid. Is that my tea, Jeeves?
No, sir. It is Mrs. Travers.
And a moment later, there was a sound like a mighty rushing wind, and the relative had crossed the threshold at 50 miles per hour under her own steam. And that is the end of chapter 3. Okay. I actually really like this so far. It's the subtle context of him ignoring her is great. Yeah. So as the letters are coming in, and as the telegrams are coming in, and he's like, it's like, oh, it's so urgent. I'm going to walk around and have 2 drinks. Oh, and it sent off a reply that obviously is not needed. And it comes back and it's even more urgent. Oh, I need to have 2 dry martinis as I contemplate life. Send it off. Oh, 3 cigarettes and a walk. Oh. Yeah, exactly. Like, a tan jacket? Sure. White? No. Cannot be done. Cannot be done. Unconscionable. All right. Let's go ahead and take a short break here. We're at about chapter 4. and these are reasonably short chapters, but the breakneck pace is unrelenting. That's fair. Mess jackets are an acquired taste. Very, yeah, just doesn't work. Yeah, that could do that could be a problem there. All right, let's go ahead and take a few minutes, stretch our legs, wet the whistles, try and rehydrate a little bit, and we'll be back in just a few minutes when we will resume from chapter 4 of Right-Ho, Jeeves. Alright. Sorry, that took a little bit longer than normal. We, had to run the kettle, as is only appropriate for anything even remotely as British as this. Alright, so let's continue where we left off with Chapter 4. We've seen Wooster's doom approach in the form of his aunt. I'm sure this will go splendidly. It has been well said of Bertram Wooster that while no one views his flesh and blood with a keener and more remorselessly critical eye, he is nevertheless a man who delights in giving credit where credit is due. And if you have followed these memoirs of mine with the proper care, you will be aware that I have frequently had occasion to emphasize the fact that Aunt Dahlia is all right. She is the one, if you remember, who married old Tom Travers en segundas noches, as I believe the expression is, the year Bluebottle won the Cambridgeshire, and once induced me to write an article on what the well-dressed man is wearing for that paper she runs, Milady's Boudoir. She is a large, genial soul with whom it is a pleasure to hobnob. In her spiritual makeup, there is none of that subtle gauche awfulness which renders such an exhibit as, say, my Aunt Agatha, the curse of the home counties, and a menace to one and all. I have the highest esteem for Aunt Dahlia, and have never wavered in my cordial appreciation of her humanity, sporting qualities, and general good eggishness. This being so, you may conceive of my astonishment at finding her at my bedside at such an hour. I mean to say, I've stayed at her place many a time and oft, and she knows my habits. She is well aware that until I have had my cup of tea in the morning, I do not receive. This crashing in at a moment when she knew that solitude and repose were of the essence was scarcely, I could not but feel, the good old form. Besides, what business had she being in London at all? That was what I asked myself. When a conscientious housewife has returned to her home after an absence of 7 weeks, one does not expect her to start racing off again the day after her arrival. One feels that she ought to be sticking around, ministering to her husband, conferring with the cook, feeding the cat, combing and brushing the Pomeranian. In a word, staying put. I was more than a little bleary-eyed, but I endeavored, as far as the fact that my eyelids were more or less glued together would permit, to give her an austere and censorious look. She didn't seem to get it. "Wake up, Bertie, you old ass!" she cried, in a voice that hit me between the eyebrows and went out the back of my head. If Aunt Dahlia has a fault, it is that she is apt to address a vis-a-vis as if she were somebody half a mile away, whom she had observed riding over hounds. A throwback, no doubt, to the time when she counted the day lost that was not spent in chivying some unfortunate fox over the countryside. I gave her another of the austere and censorious, and this time it registered. All the effect it had, however, was to cause her to descend to personalities. "Don't blink at me in that obscene way," she said. "I wonder, Bertie," she proceeded, gazing at me as I could imagine Gussie would have gazed at some newt that was not up to sample. "If you have the faintest conception how perfectly loathsome you look. A cross between an orgy scene in the movies and some low form of pond life. I suppose you were out on the tiles last night?" "I attended a social function, yes," I said coldly. "Pongo Twistleton's birthday party. I couldn't let Pongo down, noblesse oblige." "Well, get up and dress." I felt I could not have heard her right. Get up and dress? Yes. I turned on the pillow with a little moan, and at this juncture Jeeves entered with the vital oolong. I clutched at it like a drowning man at a straw hat. A deep sip or two, and I felt, I won't say restored, because a birthday party like Pongo Twistleton's isn't a thing you get restored after with a mere mouthful of tea, but sufficiently the old Bertram to be able to bend the mind on this awful thing which had come upon me. And the more I bent saying, the less I could grasp the trend of the scenario. "What is this, Aunt Dahlia?" I inquired. It looks to me like tea," was her response, "but you know best, you're drinking it." If I hadn't been afraid of spilling the healing brew, I have little doubt that I should have given an impatient gesture. I know I felt like it. Not the contents of this cup. All this, you're barging in, telling me to get up and dress, and all that rot. I've barged in, as you call it, because my telegram seemed to produce no effect, and I told you to get up and dress because I want you to get up and dress. I've come to take you back with me. I like your quest, wiring that you would come next year or whatever it was. You're coming now. I've got a job for you. But I don't want a job. What you want, my lad, is what you're going to get are two very different things. There is man's work for you to do at Brinkley Court. Be ready at the last button in 20 minutes. But I can't possibly be ready to any buttons in 20 minutes. I'm feeling awful. She seemed to consider. Yes, she said. I suppose it's only humane to give you a day or two to recover. All right then, I shall expect you on the 30th, at the latest. But, dash it, what is all this? How do you mean a job? Why a job? What sort of a job? I'll tell you if you'll only stop talking for a minute. It's quite an easy, pleasant job. You'll enjoy it. Have you ever heard of Market Snodsbury Grammar School? Never. It's a grammar school. At Market Snodsbury. I told her a little frigidly that I had divined as much. Well, how was I to know that a man with a mind like yours would grasp it so quickly? She protested. All right then. Market Snodsbury Grammar School is, as you have guessed, the grammar school at Market Snodsbury. I'm one of the governors. You mean one of the governesses? I don't mean one of the governesses. Listen, ass. There was a board of governors at Eton, wasn't there? Very well. So, there is at Market Snodsbury Grammar School. And I'm a member of it. And they left the arrangements for the summer prize giving to me. The prize giving takes place on the last or 31st day of this month. Have you got that clear? I took another ounce of the life-saving and inclined my head. Even after a Pongo Twistleton birthday party, I was capable of grasping simple facts like these. I follow you, yes. I see the point you were trying to make. Certainly. Market, Snodsbury, Grammar School, Board of Governors, prize giving, quite. But what's it got to do with me? You're going to give away the prizes. I goggled. The words did not appear to make sense. They seemed the mere aimless vaporing of an aunt who has been sitting out in the sun without a hat. Me? You? I goggled again. You don't mean me. I mean you in person. I goggled a third time. You're pulling my leg. I am not pulling your leg. Nothing would induce me to touch your beastly leg. The vicar was to have officiated, but when I got home I found a letter from him saying that he had strained a fetlock and must scratch his nomination. You can imagine the state I was in. I telephoned all over the place. Nobody would take it on. And then suddenly I thought of you. I decided to check all this rot at the outset. Nobody is more eager to oblige deserving aunts than Bertram Wooster, but there are limits, and sharply defined limits at that. So you think I'm going to stew prizes at this Bolly-Dotheboys Hall of yours? I do. And make a speech? Exactly. I laughed derisively. For goodness sake, don't start goggling now. This is serious. I was laughing. Oh, were you? Well, I'm glad to see you're taking it in this merry spirit. Derisively, I explained. I won't do it. That's final. I simply will not do it. You will do it, young Bertie, or never darken my doors again. And you would know what that means. No more of Anatole's dinner for you. A strong shudder shook me. She was alluding to her chef, that superb artiste, a monarch of his profession, unsurpassed, nay, unequaled, at dishing up the raw material so that it melted in the mouth of the ultimate consumer. Anatole had always been a magnet that drew me to Brinkley Court with my tongue hanging out. Many of my happiest moments had been those which I had spent champing this great man's roasts and ragouts. And the prospect of being barred from digging into them in the future was a numbing one. No, I say, dash it! I thought that would rattle you, you greedy young pig. Greedy young pigs have nothing to do with it, I said with a touch of hauteur. One is not a greedy young pig because one appreciates the cooking of a genius. Well, I will say I like it myself, conceded the relative, but not another bite of it do you get if you refuse to do this simple, easy, pleasant job. No, not so much as another sniff. So, put that in your 12-inch cigarette holder and smoke it. I began to feel like something wild caught in a snare. But why do you want me? I mean, what am I? Ask yourself that. I often have. I mean to say, I'm not the type. You have to have some terrific nib to give away prizes. I seem to remember when I was at school. It was generally a prime minister or somebody. Ah, but that was at Eton. At Market Snodsbury, we aren't nearly so choosy. Anybody in spats impresses us. Why don't you get Uncle Tom? Uncle Tom? Why? Well, why not? He's got spats. Bertie, she said, I would tell you why not Uncle Tom. You remember me losing all that money at Baccarat and Cannes? Well, very shortly I shall have to sidle up to Tom and break the news to him. If, right after that, I ask him to put on lavender gloves and a topper and distribute prizes at Market Snodsbury Grammar School, there will be a divorce in the family. He would pin a note to the pincushion and be off like a rabbit. No, my lad, you're for it. So you may as well make the best of it. But Aunt Dahlia, listen to reason. I assure you, you've got hold of the wrong man. I'm hopeless at a game like that. Ask Jeeves about the time I got lugged into a dress girls' school. I made the most colossal ass of myself. And I confidently anticipate that you'll make an equally colossal ass of yourself on the 31st of this month. That's why I want you. The way I look at it is that, as the thing is bound to be a frost anyway, one may as well get a hearty laugh out of it. I shall enjoy seeing you distribute those prizes, Bertie. Well, I won't keep you, as, no doubt, you want to do your Swedish exercises. I shall expect you in a day or two. And with these heartless words, she beetled off, leaving me a prey to the gloomiest set emotions. What with the natural reaction after Pongo's party and this stunning blow, it is not too much to say that the soul was seared. I was still rising in the depths when the door opened and Jeeves appeared.
Mr. Finknortle to see you, sir,
he announced. And that brings us to the end of chapter 4. Well, that was fun. The aunt who definitely is giving him a bit of a dressing down. Even the least clever of nephews can't stand up to a stern aunt. And Wooster is definitely one of the least clever nephews. Alright, so let's continue on with Chapter 5, because Mr. Finknottle has returned. I gave him one of my looks. Jeeves, I said, I had scarcely expected this of you. You are aware that I was up to an advanced hour last night. You know that I barely had my tea. You cannot be ignorant of the effect of the hearty voice of Aunt Dahlia's on a man with a headache. And yet you come bringing me Finknottles? Is this a timed Fink or any other kind of Knottle?
But did you not give me to understand, sir, that you wished to see Mr. Finknottle to advise him on his affairs?
This, I admit, opened up a new line of thought. In the stress of my emotions, I had clean forgotten about having taken Gussie's interests in hand. It altered things. One can't give the raspberry to a client, I mean. If you don't find Sherlock Holmes refusing to see clients just because he has been out late the night before at Dr. Watson's birthday party. I should have wished that the man had selected some more suitable hour for approaching me, but as he appeared to be a sort of human lark, leaving his watery nest at daybreak, I supposed I had better give him an audience. True, I said. All right, bung him in.
Very good, sir.
But before doing so, bring me one of those pick-me-ups of yours.
Very good, sir.
And presently he returned with the vital essence. I have had occasion, I fancy, to speak before now of these pick-me-ups of Jeeves and their effect on a fellow who is hanging to life by a thread on the morning after. What they consist of I couldn't tell you. He says some kind of sauce, the yolk of a roig and a dash of red pepper, but nothing will convince me that the thing doesn't go much deeper than that. Be that as it may, however, the results of swallowing one are amazing.
Sounds like soy sauce, egg yolk, and pepper. That'll do it. That'll do it.
For perhaps the split part of a second, nothing happens. It is as though all nature waited breathless. Then, suddenly, as if the last trumpet sounded and Judgment Day set in with unusual severity, bonfires burst out in all parts of the frame, the abdomen becomes heavily charged with molten lava, a great wind seems to blow through the world, and the subject is aware of something resembling a steam hammer striking the back of the head. During this phase, the ears ring loudly, the eyeballs rotate, and there is a tingling about the brow. And then, just as you are feeling that you ought to ring up your lawyer and see that your affairs are in order, before it is too late, the whole sensation seems to clarify. The wind drops, the ears cease to ring, birds twitter, brass bands start playing. The sun comes up over the horizon with a jerk. And a moment later, all you are conscious of is a great peace. As I drain the glass now, my new life seemed to burgeon within me. I remember Jeeves, who, however much he may go off the rails at times in the matter of dress clothes, and in his advice to those in love, has always had a neat turn of phrase. Once speaking of someone rising on stepping stones of his dead self to higher things. It was that way with me now. I felt that the Bertram Wooster who lay propped up against the pillows had become a better, stronger, finer Bertram. "Thank you, Jeeves," I said.
Not at all, sir.
"That touched the exact spot. I am now able to cope with life's problems."
I am gratified to hear it, sir.
"What madness not to have had one of those before tackling up Dahlia. However, too late to worry about that now. Tell me of Gussie. How did he make out at the fancy dress ball?"
He did not arrive at the fancy dress ball, sir.
I looked at him austerely. "Jeeves," I said, "I admit that after that pick-me-up of yours, I feel better. But don't try me too high. Don't stand by my stick bed telling me absolute rot. We shot Gussie into a cab and he started forth, heading for wherever this fancy dress ball was. He must have arrived."
No, sir. As I gather from Mr. Finknortle, he entered the cab convinced in his mind that the entertainment to which he had been invited was to be held at 17 Suffolk Square, whereas the actual rendezvous was at number 71 Norfolk Terrace. These aberrations of memory are not uncommon with those who, like Mr. Finknortle, belong essentially to what one might call the dreamer type.
One might also call it the fathead type.
Yes, sir.
Well,
on reaching number 17 Suffolk Square, Mr. Finknortle endeavored to produce money to pay the fare.
What stopped him?
The fact that he had no money, sir. He discovered that he had left it, together with his ticket of invitation, on the mantelpiece of his bedchamber in the house of his uncle, where he was residing. Bidding the cabman to wait, accordingly he rang the doorbell, and, when the butler appeared, requested him to pay the cab, adding that it was all right, as he was one of the guests invited to the dance. The butler then disclaimed all knowledge of a dance on the premises.
And declined to unveil it?
Yes, sir.
Upon which
Mr. Finknortle directed the cabman to drive him back to his uncle's residence.
Well, why wasn't that the happy ending? All he had to do was go in, collect cash and ticket, and then there he would be, on velvet.
I should have mentioned, sir, that Mr. Finknortle had also left his latchkey on the mantelpiece of his bedchamber.
He could have rung the bell.
He did ring the bell, sir, for some 15 minutes. At the expiration of that period, he recalled that he had given permission to the caretaker, the house was officially closed and all the staff on holiday, to visit his sailor son at Portsmouth.
Golly, Jeeves!
Yes, sir.
These dreamer types do live, don't they?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Mr. Finknortle appears to have realized at this point that his position in regards to the cabman had become equivocal. The figures on the clock had already reached a substantial sum, and he was not in a position to meet his obligations.
He could have explained.
You cannot explain to cabmen, sir. On endeavoring to do so, he found the special receptacle of his bona fides.
I should have liked it.
That is the policy which appears to have commended itself to Mr. Finknortle. He darted rapidly away, and the cabman, endeavoring to detain him, snatched at his overcoat. Mr. Finknortle contrived to extricate himself from the coat, and it would seem that his appearance in the masquerade costume beneath it came as something of a shock to the cabman. Mr. Finknortle informs me that he heard a series of whistling gasps, and, looking round, observed the man crouching against the railings with his hands over his face. Mr. Finnortle thinks that he was praying. No doubt an uneducated, superstitious fellow, sir. Possibly a drinker.
Well, if he hadn't been one before, I'll bet he started being one shortly afterwards. I expect he could scarcely wait for the pubs to open.
Very possibly. In the circumstances, he might have found a restorative agreeable, sir.
And so, in the circumstances, might Gussie too, I should think. What on earth did he do after that? London late at night, or even in the daytime for that matter, is no place for a man in scarlet tights.
No, sir.
He invites comment.
Yes, sir.
I can see the poor old bird ducking down side streets, skulking in alleyways, diving into dustbins.
I gathered from Mr. Finnortle's remarks, sir, that something very much on those lines was what occurred. Eventually, after a trying night, he found his way to Mr. Sipperley's residence, where he was able to secure lodging and a change of costume in the morning.
I nestled against the pillows, the brow a bit drawn. It is all very well to try and do old-school friends a spot of good, but I could not but feel that, in espousing the cause of a lunkhead capable of mucking things up as Gussie had done, I had taken on a contract almost too big for human consumption. It seemed to me that what Gussie needed was not so much the advice of a seasoned man of the world as a padded cell in Colony Hatch, and a couple of good keepers to see that he did not set the place on fire. Indeed, for an instant, I had half a mind to withdraw from the case and hand it back to Jeeves. But the pride of the Woosters restrained me. When we Woosters put our hands to the plough, we do not readily sheathe the sword. Besides, after that business of the mess jacket, anything resembling weakness would have been fatal. I suppose you realize, Jeeves, I said, for though one dislikes to rub it in, these things have to be pointed out, that this was all your fault.
Sir?
It's no good saying sir. You know it was. If you had not insisted on his going to that dance, a mad project, as I spotted from the first, this would not have happened.
Yes, sir, but I confess I did not anticipate.
Always anticipate everything, Jeeves, I said, a little sternly. It is the only way. Even if you had allowed him to wear a Piero costume, things would not have planned out as they did. A Piero costume has pockets. However, I went on more kindly, we need not go into that now. If all this has shown you what comes of going about the place in scarlet tights, that is something gained. Gussie waits without, you say?
Yes, sir.
Then shoot him in, and I will see what I can do for him. That brings us to the end of chapter 5. So, the newt-loving friend did rather poorly at the party the last night. It's a shame, really. Hoping that he would find his female newt, or be the male newt, or something. I have a feeling, though, somehow or other, everything is going to work out well for Gussie. Don't tell me how I know. I just have an idea. It's a hunch. Somehow he's going to bumble into bagging the most perfect match for himself, and it'll be despite all the help that Wooster's giving him. I'm certain. All right, let's continue with chapter 6. At the pace of these chapters, we can probably get a couple more in tonight. Gussie, on arrival, proved to still be showing traces of his grim experience. The face was pale, the eyes gooseberry-like, the eyes drooping, and the whole aspect that of a man who has passed through the furnace and been caught in the machinery. I hitched myself up a bit higher on the pillows and gazed at him narrowly. It was a moment, I could see, when first aid was required. I prepared to get down to cases. Well, Gussie?
Hello, Bertie.
What ho?
What ho?
These civilities concluded, I felt that the moment had come to touch delicately on the past. I hear you've been going through it a bit.
Yes.
Thanks to Jeeves.
It wasn't Jeeves' fault.
Entirely Jeeves' fault.
I don't see that. I forgot my money, and latchkey.
And now you'd better forget Jeeves, for you will be interested to hear, Gussie, I said, deeming it best to put him in touch with the position of affairs right away, that he is no longer handling your little problem. This seemed to slip it across him properly. The jaws fell, the ears drooped more limply. He had been looking like a dead fish. He now looked like a deader fish. One of last year's, cast up on some lonely beach and left there at the mercy of the wind and tides.
What?
Yes.
You don't mean that Jeeves isn't going to...
No.
But dash it.
I was kind, but firm. You will be much better off without him. Surely your terrible experiences of that awful night have told you that Jeeves needs a rest. The keenest of thinkers strikes a bad patch occasionally. That is what has happened to Jeeves. I have seen it coming on for some time. He has lost his form. He wants his plugs decarbonized. No doubt this is a shock to you. I suppose you came here this morning to seek his advice?
Of course I did.
On what point?
Madeline Bassett is going to stay with these people in the country, and I want to know what he thinks I ought to do.
Well, as I say, Jeeves is off the case.
But, Bertie, dash it.
Jeeves, I said with a certain asperity, is no longer on the case. I am now in sole charge.
But what on earth can you do?
I curbed my resentment. We Woosters are fair-minded. We can make allowances for men who have been parading London all night in scarlet heights. That, I said quietly, we shall see. Sit down and let us confer. I am bound to say the thing which seems quite simple to me. You say this girl has gone to visit friends in the country. It would appear obvious that you must go there too, and flock round her like a poultice. Elementary.
But I can't plant myself on a lot of perfect strangers.
Don't you know these people?
Of course I don't. I don't know anybody.
I pursed the lips. This did seem to complicate matters somewhat.
All that I know is their name is Travers, and it's a place called Brinkley Court, down in Worcester.
I unpursed my lips. Gussie, I said, smiling paternally, it is a lucky day for you when Bertram Wooster interested himself in your affairs. As I foresaw from the start, I can fix everything. This afternoon, you shall go to Brinkley Court, an honored guest. He quivered like a moose. I suppose it must always be rather a thrilling experience for the novice to watch me taking hold.
But Bertie, you don't mean you know these Traverses?
They are my Aunt Dahlia.
My gosh.
You see now, I pointed out, how lucky you were to get me behind you. You go to Jeeves, and what does he do? He dresses you up in scarlet tights, and one of the foulest false beards of my experience, and sends you off to fancy dress balls. Result, agony of spirit and no progress. I then take over and put you on the right lines. Could Jeeves have got you into Brinkley Court? Not a chance. Aunt Dahlia isn't his aunt. I merely mention these things.
By Jove, Bertie, I didn't know how to thank you.
My dear chap.
But I say...
Now what?
What do I do when I get there?
If you knew Brinkley Court, you would not ask that question. In these romantic surroundings, you can't miss. The great lovers through the ages have fixed up in the preliminary formalities of Brinkley. The place is simply ill with atmosphere. You will stroll with the girl in the shady walks. You will sit with her on the shady lawns. You will row on the lake with her, and gradually you will find yourself working up to a point where...
By Jove, I believe you're right.
Of course I'm right. I've engaged 3 times at Brinkley. No business resulted, but the fact remains, and I went out there with the foggiest idea of indulging in the tender hash. I hadn't the slightest intention of proposing to anybody, yet no sooner had I entered those romantic grounds than I found myself reaching out for the nearest girl in sight and slapping my soul down in front of her. It's something in the air.
I see exactly what you mean. That's just what I want to be able to do. Work up to it. And in London, curse the place. Everything's in such a rush that you don't get a chance.
Quite. You see a girl for about 5 minutes a day, and if you want to ask her to be your wife, you've got to charge into it as if you were going to grab the gold ring on a merry-go-round.
That's right. London rattles one. I shall be a different man altogether in the country. What a bit of luck, this Travers woman turning out to be your aunt.
I don't know what you mean, turning out to be my aunt. She's been my aunt all along.
I mean, How extraordinary that it should be your aunt that Madeline's going to stay with.
Not at all. She and my cousin Angela are close friends. At Cannes, she was with us all the time.
Here it comes. Oh, you met Madeline at Cannes, did you? By Jove, Bertie,
said the poor lizard devoutly.
I wish I could have seen her at Cannes. How wonderful she must have looked in beach pajamas. Oh, Bertie.
Quite, I said, a little distantly. Even when restored by one of Jeeves' depth bombs, one doesn't want this sort of thing after a hard night. I touched the bell and, when Jeeves appeared, requested him to bring me a telegraph form and pencil. I then wrote a well-worded communication to Aunt Dahlia, informing her that I was sending my friend, Augustus Fink Nortle, down to Brinkley today to enjoy her hospitality, and handed it to Gussie. Push that in at the first post office you pass, I said. She will find it waiting for her on her return. Gussie popped along, flapping the telegram and looking like a close-up of Joan Crawford. And I turned to Jeeves and gave him a precise of my operations. Simple, you observe, Jeeves. Nothing elaborate.
No, sir.
Wrong voice there.
No, sir.
Nothing far-fetched, nothing strained or bizarre, just nature's remedy.
Yes, sir.
This is the attack as it should have been delivered. What do you call it when two people of opposite sexes are bunged together in close association in a secluded spot, meeting each other every day and seeing a lot of each other?
Is propinquity the word you wish, sir?
It is. I stake everything on propinquity, Jeeves. Propinquity, in my opinion, is what will do the trick. At the moment, as you are aware, Gussie is a mere jelly when in the presence. But ask yourself how he will feel in a week or two, after he and she have been helping themselves to sausages out of the same dish day after day at the breakfast sideboard, cutting the same ham, ladling out communal kidneys and bacon. Why? I broke off abruptly. I had had one of my ideas. Golly, Jeeves.
Sir?
Here's an instance of how you have to think of everything. You heard me mention sausages, kidneys and bacon and ham.
Yes, sir.
Well, there must be nothing of that. Fatal! The wrong note entirely. Give me that telegraph form and pencil. I must warn Gussie without delay. What he's got to do is create in this girl's mind the impression that he is pining away for love of her. This cannot be done by wolfing sausages.
No, sir.
Very well, then. And taking form and pen, I drafted the following. Fink Nortle, Brinkley Court, Market, Snodsbury, Worcester. Lay off the sausages. Avoid the ham. Bertie. Send that off, Jeeves, instanter.
Very good, sir.
I sank back on the pillows. Well, Jeeves, I said, you see how I'm taking hold? You notice the grip I'm getting on this case? No doubt you realize now that it would pay you to study my methods.
No doubt, sir.
And even now, you aren't on to the full depths of the extraordinary sagacity I've shown. Do you know what brought Aunt Dahlia up here this morning? She came to tell me I've got to distribute the prizes at some beastly seminary she's a governor of down at Market Snodsbury.
Indeed, sir. I fear you will scarcely find that a congenial task.
Ah, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to shove it off to Gussie.
Sir?
I propose, Jeeves, to wire to Aunt Dahlia saying that I can't get down and suggesting that she unleashes him on these young borstal inmates of hers in my stead.
But if Mr. Fink Nortle should decline, sir?
Decline? Can you see him declining? Just conjure up the picture in your mind, Jeeves. Scene. The drawing room at Brinkley. Gussie wedged into a corner with Aunt Dahlia standing over him making hunting noises. I put it to you, Jeeves. Can you see him declining?
Not readily, sir, I agree. Mrs. Travers is a forceful personality.
He won't have a hope of declining. His only way out should be to slide off, and he can't slide off because he wants to be with Miss Bassett. No, Gussie will have to toe the line, and I shall be saved from a job, at which, I confess, the soul shuddered. Getting up on a platform and delivering a short, manly speech to a lot of foul school kids. Golly, Jeeves, I haven't been through that sort of thing once, what? You remember that time at the girls' school?
Very vividly, sir.
What an ass I made of myself.
Certainly, I have seen you at better advantage, sir.
I think you might I think you might bring me just one more of those dynamite specials of yours, Jeeves. This narrow squeak has made me come over all faint. I suppose it must have taken Aunt Dahlia 3 hours or so to get back to Brinkley, because it wasn't until well after lunch that her telegram arrived. It read like a telegram that had been dispatched in a white-hot surge of emotion some 2 minutes after she had read mine. As follows. Am taking legal advice to ascertain whether strangling an idiot nephew counts as murder. If it doesn't look out for yourself, consider your conduct frozen limit. What do you mean by planting your loathsome friends on me like this? Do you think Brinkley Court is a leper colony, or what is it? Who is this spink bottle? Love, Travis. I had expected some such initial reaction. I replied in temperate vein, not bottle, nottle. Regards, Bertie. Almost immediately after she had dispatched the above hot cry, Gussie must have arrived, for it wasn't 20 minutes later when I received the following. Cipher telegram.
Cipher telegram signed by you has reached me here. Runs. Lay off sausages. Avoid the ham. Wire key immediately. Think novel.
I replied, also kidneys. Cheerio, Bertie. I had staked all on Gussie making a favorable impression on his hostess, basing my confidence on the fact that he was one of those timid, obsequious, teacup-passing, thin bread and butter offering yes-men whom women of my Aunt Dahlia's type nearly always like at first sight. That I had not overrated my acumen was proved by her next in order, which, I was pleased to note, essayed a markedly larger percentage of the milk of human kindness. As follows. Well, this friend of yours has got here, and I must say that, for a friend of yours, he seems less subhuman than I had expected. A bit of a pop-eyed bleater, but on the whole clean and civil, and certainly most informative about newts. I'm considering arranging a series of lectures for him in the neighborhood. All the same, I like your nerve using my house as a summer hotel resort, and shall have much to say to you on the subject when you come down. Expect you 30th. Bring spats. Love, Travers. To this I reposted, on consulting engagement book, find impossible come Brinkley Court. Deeply regret. Toodaloo, Bertie. Hers, in reply, struck a sinister note. Oh, so it's like that, is it? You and your engagement book, indeed! Deeply regret my foot. Let me tell you, my lad, that you will regret it a jolly sight more deeply if you don't come down. If you imagine for one moment that you're going to get out of distributing those prizes, you are very much mistaken. Deeply regret Brinkley Court 100 miles from London, and was unable to hit you with a brick. Love, Travers. I then put my fortune to the test, to win or lose it all. It was not a moment for petty economies. I let myself go, regardless of the expense. No, but dash it, listen. Honestly, you don't want me. Get Funk Norton to distribute prizes. A born distributor who will do you credit. Confidently anticipate Augustus Fink Norton as master of revels on 31st inst. Would make genuine sensation. Do not miss this great chance, which may never occur again. Tinkety-tonk, Bertie. There was an hour of breathless suspense, and then the joyful tidings arrived. Well, all right. Something in what you say, I suppose. Consider you treacherous worm and contemptible, spineless, cowardly custard, but have booked Spink Bottle. Stay where you are, then, and I hope you get run over by an omnibus. Love, Travers. The relief, as you may well imagine, was stupendous. A great weight seemed to have rolled off my mind. It was as if somebody had been pouring Jeeves' pick-me-ups into me through a funnel. I sang as I dressed for dinner that night. At the drones I was so gay and cheery that there were several complaints, and when I got home and turned into the old bed, I fell asleep like a little child within 5 minutes of inserting the person between the sheets. It seemed to me that the whole distressing affair might now be considered definitely closed. Conceive my astonishment, therefore, when waking on the morrow and sitting up to dig into the morning teacup, I beheld on my tray another telegram. My heart sank. Could Aunt Dahlia have slept on it and changed her mind? Could Gussie, unable to face the ordeal confronting him, have legged it during the night down a water pipe? With these speculations racing through the bean, I tore open the envelope, and as I noted contents, I uttered a startled yip. "Sir," said Jeeves, pausing at the door. I read the thing again. Yes, I had got the gist all right. No, I had not been deceived in the substance. "Jeeves," I said, "do you know what?"
"No, sir."
"You know my cousin Angela?"
"Yes, sir."
"You know young Tuppy Glossop?"
"Yes, sir."
"They've broken off their engagement."
"I am sorry to hear that, sir."
"I have here a communication from Aunt Dahlia, specifically stating this. I wonder what the row was about."
"I could not say, sir."
"Of course you couldn't. Don't be an ass, Jeeves."
"No, sir."
I brooded. I was deeply moved. Well, this means that we shall have to go down to Brinkley today. Aunt Dahlia is obviously all of a twitter, and my place is by her side. You'd better pack this morning, and catch that 12:45 train with the luggage. I have a lunch engagement, so we'll follow in the car."
"Very good, sir."
I brooded some more. I must say, this has come as a great shock to me, Jeeves.
"No doubt, sir."
A very great shock. Angela and Tuppy. Tut, tut. Why, they seem like the paper on the wall. Life is full of sadness, Jeeves.
"Yes, sir."
Still, there it is.
"Undoubtedly, sir."
Right-ho then. Switch on the bath.
"Very good, sir."
And that brings us to the end of chapter 6, wherein things are somehow actually going pretty decently. But we still find that he's on his way to his aunt. Well, I love the back and forth between Wooster and his aunt. The way they sign off on the telegrams is he's just a smug little shit, and she just hates him. I love it. Oh, all right. Let's see. How long is this next chapter? We've got probably time for one more. But let's be sure. Oh, this next one is actually a little on the longer side, which will be perfect then. We'll probably end after 7 here then. So, let's continue now with chapter 7. I meditated pretty freely as I drove down to Brinkley in the old two-seater that afternoon. The news of this rift or rupture of Angela's and Tuppy's had disturbed me greatly. The projected match, you see, was one on which I had always looked with kindly approval. Too often, when a chap of your acquaintance is planning to marry a girl you know, you find yourself knitting the brow a bit and chewing the lower lip dubiously, feeling that he or she or both should be warned while there is still yet time. But I have never felt anything of this nature about Tuppy or Angela. Tuppy, when not making an ass of himself, is a soundish sort of egg. So is Angela a soundish sort of egg. And as far as being in love was concerned, it had always seemed to me that you wouldn't have been far out in describing them as two hearts that beat as one. True, they had their little tiffs, notably on the occasion when Tuppy, with what he said was fearless honesty, and I considered thorough good goofiness, had told Angela that her new hat made her look like a Pekingese. And in every romance you have to budget for the occasional dust-up. And after that incident, I had supposed that he had learned his lesson, and that from then on, life would be one grand sweet song. And now this wholly unforeseen severing of diplomatic relations had popped up through a trap. I gave the thing the cream of the Wooster brain all the way down, but it continued to beat me what could have caused the outbreak of hostilities, and I banged my foot sedulously on the accelerator in order to get to Aunt Dahlia with the greatest possible speed and learn the inside history straight from the horse's mouth. And what with all 6 cylinders hitting nicely, I made good time, and found myself closeted with the relatives shortly before the hour of the evening cocktail. She seemed glad to see me. In fact, she actually said she was glad to see me, a statement no other aunt on the list would have committed herself to, the customary reaction of those near and dear ones to the spectacle of Bertram arriving for a visit being a sort of sick horror. "Decent of you to rally round, Bertie," she said. "My place was by your side, Aunt Dahlia," I responded. I could see at the AG that the unfortunate affair had got in amongst her in no uncertain manner. Her usually cheerful map was clouded, and the genial spy conspicuous by its absence. I pressed her hand sympathetically, to indicate that my heart bled for her. "Bad show, this, my dear old flesh and blood," I said. "I'm afraid you've been having a sickly time. You must be worried." She snorted emotionally. She looked like an aunt who had just bitten into a bad oyster.
Worried is right. I haven't had a peaceful moment since I got back from Cannes. Ever since I put my foot across this blasted threshold,
said Aunt Dahlia, returning from the nonce to the hearty argot of the hunting field.
Everything's been at 6s and 7s. First, there's that mix-up about the prize giving.
She paused at this point and gave me a look.
I had been meaning to speak freely to you about your behavior in that matter, Bernie, she said. I have some good things all stored up, but as you've rallied round like this, I suppose I shall have to let you off. And anyway, it is probably all for the best that you evaded your obligations in that sickeningly craven way. I have an idea that this Sphinx bottle of yours is going to be good, if only he can keep off newts.
Has he been going about newts?
He has, fixing me with a glittering eye like the ancient mariner. But if that was the worst I had to bear, I wouldn't mind. What I'm worrying about is what Tom says when he starts talking.
Uncle Tom?
I wish there was something else you could call him except Uncle Tom,
said Aunt Dahlia, a little testily.
Every time you do it, I expect to see him turn black and start playing the banjo. Yes, Uncle Tom, if you must have it. I shall have to tell him soon about losing all that money at Baccarat. And when I do, he will go up like a rocket.
I'm glad she made the same association that we probably were. Still, no doubt Time, the great healer, be blowed.
I've got to get a check for £500 out of him for Milady's boudoir by August the 3rd at the latest.
I was concerned. Apart from from a nephew's natural interest in an aunt's refined weekly paper, I had always had a soft spot in my heart for Milady's boudoir, ever since I contributed that article to it on what the well-dressed man is wearing. Sentimental, possibly, but we old journalists do have these feelings. Is the boudoir on the rocks?
It will be if Tom doesn't cough up. He needs help till it's turned around the corner.
But wasn't it turning the corner 2 years ago?
It was, and it's still at it. Till you run a weekly paper with women, you don't know what corners are.
And do you think the chances of getting into my uncle by marriage's ribs are slight?
I'll tell you, Bertie. Up till now, when these subsidies were required, I have always been able to come to Tom in the gay, confident spirit of an only child touching an indulgent father for chocolate cream. But he's just had a demand from the income tax people for an additional £58, 1 and 3 pence. And all he's been talking about since I got back has been ruin and the sinister trend of socialistic legislation and what will become of us all.
I could readily believe it. This Tom has a peculiarity I've noticed in some other very oofy men. Nick him for the paltriest sum, and he lets out a squawk, and you can hear it Land's End. He has the stuff in gobs, but he hates giving up.
If it wasn't for Anatole's cooking, I doubt if you would bother to carry on. Thank God for Anatole, I say.
I bowed my head reverently. Good old Anatole, I said.
Amen,
said Aunt Dahlia. Then the look of holy ecstasy, which is always the result of letting the mind dwell, however briefly, on Anatole's cooking, died out of her face.
But don't let me wander on the subject, she resumed. I was telling you the way Hale's foundations have been quivering since I got home. First, the prize giving, then Tom, and now, on top of everything else, this infernal quarrel between Angela and the young Glossop.
I nodded gravely. I was frightfully sorry to hear that. Terrible shock. What was the row about?
Sharks.
Eh?
Sharks. Or rather, one individual shark. The brute that went for the poor child when she was aquaplaning at Cannes. You remember Angela's shark?
Certainly I remembered Angela's shark. A man of sensibility does not forget about a cousin nearly being chewed by monsters of the deep. The episode was still green in my memory. In a nutshell, what had occurred was this. You know how you aquaplane, A motorboat nips on ahead, trailing a rope. You stand on a board holding the rope, and the boat tows you along. And every now and then you lose your grip on the rope and plunge into the sea and have to swim to your board again. A silly process, it seemed to me, though many find it diverting. Well, on the occasion referred to, Angela had just regained her board after taking a loss, when a great beastly shark came along and cannoned into it, flinging her into the salty once more. It took her quite a bit of time to get on again, and make the motorboat chap realize what was up and haul her to safety. And during that interval, you can readily picture her embarrassment. According to Angela, the funny denizen kept snapping at her ankles virtually without cessation, so that by the time help arrived, she was feeling more like a salted almond at a public dinner than anything human. Very shaken the poor child had been, I recall, and had talked of nothing else for weeks. I remember the whole incident vividly, I said, but how did that start the trouble? She was telling him the story last night. Well, her eyes shining and her little hands clasped in girlish excitement. No doubt, and instead of giving her the understanding and sympathy to which she was entitled, what do you think his blasted glossop did? He sat listening like a lump of dough, as if he'd been talking about the weather. And when she had finished, he took his cigarette holder out of his mouth and said, I expect it was only a floating log. He didn't. He did. And when Angela described how the thing had jumped and snapped at her, he took his cigarette holder out of his mouth again and said, Oh, probably a flatfish. Quite harmless. No doubt it was just trying to play. Well, I mean, what would you have done if you had been Angela? She has pride, sensibility, all the natural feelings of a good woman. She told him he was an ass, and a fool, and an idiot, and didn't know what he was talking about. I must say, when I saw the girl's viewpoint, it was only about once in a lifetime that anything sensational ever happens to one, and when it does, you don't want people taking all the color out of it. I remember at school having to read that stuff where that chap Othello tells the girl what the hell of a time he'd been having among the cannibals and whatnot. Well, imagine his feelings of it after he had described some particularly sticky passage with the cannibal chief and was waiting for the awestruck, oh, not really. She had had that whole thing and had no doubt been greatly exaggerated, and that the man had probably been a prominent local vegetarian. Yes, I saw Angela's point of view. But don't tell me that when he saw how shirty she was about it, the chump didn't back down. He didn't. He argued, and one thing led to another until, by easy stages, they arrived at the point where she was saying that she didn't know if he was aware of it, but if he didn't knock off starchy foods and do exercises every morning, he would be getting as fat as a pig. He was talking about this modern habit of girls putting makeup on their faces, of which he has always disapproved. This continued for a while, and when there was a loud pop and the air was full of mangled fragments of their engagement. I'm distracted about it. Thank goodness you've come, Bertie. Nothing could have kept me away, I replied, touched. I felt you needed me. Yes. Quite. Or rather, she said, not you, of course, but Jeeves. The minute all this happened, I thought of him. The situation obviously cries out for Jeeves. If ever in the whole history of human affairs there was a moment that lofty brain was required without the home, this is it. I think if I had been standing up, I would have staggered. In fact, I'm pretty sure I would. But it isn't so dashed easy to stagger when you're sitting in an armchair. Only my face, therefore, showed how deeply I had been stung by these words. Until she spoke them, I had been all sweetness and light, the sympathetic nephew prepared to strain every nerve to do his bit. I now froze, and the face became hard and set. Jeeves, I said, between clenched teeth. Wumbarufen, said Aunt Dahlia. I saw that she had got the wrong angle. I was not sneezing. I was saying Jeeves. And well, you may. What a man! I'm going to put the whole thing up to him. There's nobody like Jeeves. My frigidity became more marked. I venture to take issue with you, Aunt Dahlia. You take what? Issue? You do you? I emphatically do. Jeeves is hopeless. What? Quite hopeless. He has lost his grip entirely. Only a couple of days ago, I was compelled to take him off a case because his handling of it was so footling. And anyway, I resent this assumption, if assumption is the word I want, that Jeeves is the only fellow with brain. I object to the way everybody puts things up to him without consulting me and letting me have a stab at them first. She seemed about to speak, but I checked her with a gesture. It is true that in the past I have sometimes seemed fit to seek Jeeves's advice. It is possible that in the future I may seek it again. But I claim the right to have a pop at these problems, as they arise in person, without having everybody behave as if Jeeves was the only onion in the hash. I sometimes feel that Jeeves, although admittedly not unsuccessful in the past, has been lucky rather than gifted. Have you and Jeeves had a row? Nothing of the kind. You seem to have it in for him. Not at all. And yet I must admit there was a modicum of truth in what she said. I had been feeling pretty austere about the man all day, and I'll tell you why. You remember that he caught that 12:45 train with the luggage, while I remained on in order to keep a luncheon engagement. Well, just before I started out to the tryst, I was pottering about the flat, and suddenly, I don't know what put the suspicion into my head, possibly the fellow's manner had been furtive. Something seemed to whisper to me to go and have a look in the wardrobe. And it was as I had expected. There was the mess jacket, still on its hanger. The hound hadn't packed it. Well, as anybody at the drones will tell you, Bertram Wooster is a pretty hard chap to out-general. I shoved the thing in a brown paper parcel and put it in the back of the car, and it was on a chair in the hall now. But that didn't alter the fact that Jeeves had attempted to do the dirty on me, and I suppose a certain, what do you call it, had crept into my manner during the above remarks. There has been no breach, I said. You might describe it as a passing coolness, but no more. We did not happen to see eye to eye with regard to my white mess jacket with the brass buttons, and I was compelled to assert my personality, but, well, it doesn't matter anyway. The thing that matters is that you are talking piffle, you poor fish. Jeeves lost his grip. Absurd! Why, I saw him for a moment when he arrived, and his eyes were absolutely glittering with intelligence. I said to myself, trust Jeeves, and I intend to. You would be far better advised to let me see what I can accomplish. Aunt Dahlia. For heaven's sake, don't you start butting in. It'll only make matters worse. On the contrary, it may interest you to know that while driving here, I concentrated deeply on this trouble of Angela's, and was successful in formulating a plan, based on the psychology of the individual, which I am proposing to put into effect at an early moment. Oh my God! My knowledge of human nature tells me it will work. Bertie, said Aunt Dahlia, and her manner struck me as febrile. Lay off! Lay off! For pity's sake, lay off! I know these plans of yours. I suppose you want to shove Angela into the lake and push young Glossop in after her to save her life or something like that. Nothing of the kind. It's the sort of thing you would do. My scheme is far more subtle. Let me outline it for you. No thanks. I say to myself, but not to me. Do listen for a second. I won't. Righto, then I am dumb, and have been from a child. I perceived that little good results from continuing the discussion. I waved a hand and shrugged a shoulder. Very well, Aunt Dahlia, I said, with dignity. If you don't want to be in on the ground floor, that is your affair. But you are missing an intellectual treat. And anyway, no matter how much you may behave like the deaf adder of Scripture, which, as you are doubtless aware, the more one piped, the less it danced, or words to that effect, I shall carry on as planned. I am extremely fond of Angela, and I shall spare no effort to bring the sunshine back into her heart. Bertie, you abysmal chump! I appeal to you once more. Will you please lay off? You'll only make things 10 times as bad as they are already. I remember reading in one of those historical novels about a chap. A buck he would have been, no doubt, or a macaroni, or some such bird as that, who, when people said the wrong thing, merely laughed down from lazy eyelids and flicked a speck of dust from the irreproachable Michelin lace at his wrists. This was practically what I did now. At least, I straightened my tie and smiled one of those inscrutable smiles of mine, and then withdrew and went out for a saunter in the garden. And the first chap I ran into was young Tuppy. His brow was furrowed, and he was moodily bunging stones in a flower pot. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 7. This is so much fun. I don't know how I've dodged this so far, but this is this is a lot. Between the main character, between the narrator being a buffoon in the best possible way, and everyone around him just letting him have it and him not even realizing it. It's just so perfect. Oh, man. After we get through this, I'm definitely going to have to probably pull up the old BBC show, because I know I'm not doing it justice, but I want to get through mine. And yeah, this is a wonderful reminder that comedic works are a good option, especially since a lot of times the delivery is baked into the material, so I don't need to fake it. But yeah, I am enjoying this one quite a lot. I'm thrilled that we stumbled on it, and it should be, because if I'm looking at it, we're about a quarter of the way through. So this will take us about 4 nights, which should get us through the weekend, and then if we have any overlap, it'll be on Tuesday or so. But I think if we time things right, on Tuesday we'll be able to start Wizard of Oz, which will be perfect. Yeah. I like to think that I've got a decent pacing, but I'm sure Laurie and Fry is much, much better. But I mean, it can't really go up to that. All right, guys. That. So, speaking of the energy, that is a lot all through all at once. So I think we are going. Well, I mean, it's 10 o'clock anyway. So let's go ahead and wrap up here for the night. We'll be having to look forward to this one for a couple days. We will be back on Friday to continue. Right-ho, Jeeves. Brace yourselves, because this is so much more fun and happily to look forward to than Genji was. I have no qualms about this one whatsoever. If anything, my only fear coming on is to wait and see how badly he manages to bungle things. But somehow, I'm sure everything will still work out in the end. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. So, as always, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've been enjoying this selection, and if you have, go ahead and drop us a like on the stream, maybe a subscription to the channel. Let the algorithm know we're doing fun things, and we'll be back on Friday for our continued reading. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night. Bye now.